Hello and greetings everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AnimeSub with me, Tyler. This is episode 3, where we're going to get to talk about some interesting anime today. One I think is really unknown to some degree. I don't think a lot of people are aware of this one. I'd like to kind of bring some light to it. And as for the other one, I think it has some controversial nature surrounding it, but I wanted to tackle it anyways because I frankly enjoyed the show for the most part. So we're going to be talking about 2 animes today. It has not been a lot of time since the last time I recorded the previous episode, so there's not really any new news or anything for me to talk about. I'm quite literally recording this the day after I recorded the previous episode, so no big updates on news and no big updates in relation to me as well. With that, I'm not going to waste any more time. I want to get directly into our first anime of the day. This is Blue Submarine No.6. This is from 1998, kind of a retro anime today. Sorry to all of you 90s kids who are hearing your decade you were born and being referred to as retro. I feel you. I'm also a 90s baby, so don't worry. I'm making myself a relic with that comment as well, not just you. So, Blue Submarine No.6 is interesting. It follows a guy named Hayami, I believe, who is a former, I think, submarine captain. I don't know if he was ever a captain. His flashback never made him seem like a captain. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. The backstory was a little bit vague and didn't offer a lot of context for his character. That said, I came out of this anime quite liking most of the characters. I really like Kino a lot as well as Hayami, and I'm trying to think of his name. I want to say Fleg, but the monster shark hybrid thing guy that's kind of a villain throughout the show. I liked him, except I thought that the filter that they used on his voice sounded just terrible. It sounded like something I would have done on Audacity. As a matter of fact, something I can do on Audacity. The way that you recreate the filter that they use for that voice, you would just record your voice like this, then create 2 separate tracks, copy and paste your voice in there so you have 3 different versions of your voice, pitch one up, pitch one down, and then just intermittently mute different ones as your speech goes on. And that is exactly how you imitate the voice that he had in this show. Getting my notes mixed up here. I also really like the animation in this show. I think that's not a universal point that I've seen a lot of people making reviews of this show, but I really like the animation in this show. I think it looks really good. I'm a big fan of the kind of 90s hand-drawn style that they're using here. And I think it works really well. And counter to what everyone else says, I actually like the CGI in this show. Don't tell anyone, but I like the CGI in this show. I think it makes it look like a PS1 game. And that's just kind of sick to me. So even though the CGI bits, it can be kind of distracting, I don't think it's as bad as would normally be the case with anime like this. I do once again find myself kind of annoyed with the narrative here. Unfortunately, I think the Antag's motivation is inconsistent, and he goes from being this sort of pessimistic, genocidal nihilist that thinks that all humans should die, and they state several times that he's killed 10 billion people. They say that multiple times throughout the show. It's a statistic that they keep boasting. But once we get to him and we get to hear, spoilers by the way for Blue Submarine No.6, because I do want to kind of go into, once they get to him and they talk with him, he has this weird neoliberal centrist, let's all coexist together in like 2 episodes apart from when he was like, you all deserve to die. Fuck all of you. You should have listened to me. You should have gone my way. Now everyone perishes because of it. He gives, and I'm also going to say, in the first episode, he was playing these propaganda, I think, over these machines that he sent up. Or they may have been animals. I think they're supposed to be animals, those CG crab-looking things. I don't know. But either way, he had a message that was playing over them whenever he sent them to shore, and it's totally unintelligible. The site that I was watching this anime on didn't have subtitles for that section. I think literally the subtitles just said, I don't know, whenever they were playing his voice over the speakers. But whenever he got to talk to the crew, at one point and got to have a discussion with them, it felt very much like he relished the war and he thought that what he was doing was righteous to some degree, and that wiping out the human race would greatly benefit the world that he was creating, this kind of new world order thing. But once we get to him and we find him, he once again cops out with the neoliberal centrist garbage that is just him saying, well, I just want everyone to coexist together. And it's like, if you wanted us to all coexist together, I don't think you end up killing 10 billion people. And also, the anime unfortunately decides that Hayami has to fall in line with this message, and it just ends up making the message muddled, and it makes it this kind of centrist garbage about how both groups should coexist, even though one side has killed 10 billion people. And I'm sure someone will come in here and argue, well, haven't we killed more than 10 billion animals? I'm sure we have. I'm sure we've killed over 10 billion animals. I'm not arguing that the human race deserves to live in this anime. I'm arguing that I'm against this point where everyone should coexist. Everyone should exist together. I'm arguing against the side that has killed 10 billion people, and now the other side is just expected to throw their hands up and go, oh, well, we should all just get along. We should all just be friends. I don't believe in that. I think that that is hogwash. I think that's bullshit. I think that's fucking ridiculous. And I think that that is a problem that a lot of people had with this anime, from what I read, is that it kind of goes back and forth, and you can only make people so evil before your character is no longer redeemable in any sense. Like, if we came across this guy and maybe the war was a recent thing, and maybe humans, overreacted, and there was a lot more killing on the human side, then maybe this coexist narrative can work. But for the most part, this is just a two-state solution that favors one side deeply. Like, one side has lost 10 million people. I'm going to keep reiterating that statistic because they state it throughout this anime. And keep in mind, this is a 4-episode anime, so the story's pretty tight, pretty concise. And they don't have a lot of time to work with, but I think that they work with it pretty well until you get to the end and you realize that this is just more coexisting garbage. So I was greatly annoyed by the ending here, but overall, I do think that the anime has its charm. I think if you're in the mood for something kind of retro, I was looking for something more in the line of like Submarine whenever I started looking into this one, and I pretty much got what I asked for. The submarine sections of this anime do work really well. I think I wanted more submarine sections. The submarine, despite being in the title, the submarining aspect of this is like, it takes a backseat to everything else, I'm going to be honest. This is not really a submarine anime. There are submarine parts. Keep in mind, again, 4 episodes. So it's very compact anyways, even if it was heavily submarine focused. You're going to get submarine scenes out of this. You're going to get some submarine scenes. You're going to get some submarine living. And that is cool. But it's definitely not the focus of this anime for sure. So that's where I find myself with this OVA. It, it's so tightly wound for 4 episodes, and you'd think it's really hard to tell a good story in 4 episodes, but I think this one, despite kind of falling off at the end, I still enjoy the story, and I would still watch this again, given the opportunity. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be in terms of like the CGI and stuff, but I just dislike where the story ends up leading. I don't think that the story lands it with the ending. I think the ending is, centrist pussy shit. So I did not like the ending of this anime. I definitely recommend it, kind of shakily, I would say. This is not a strong recommendation. More so if you're like me and you're in the market for something kind of submarine, something kind of aquatic. And also, I think that the creature design is cool. I really like the fish people that we come across. Sometime in the first episode, Muty, who gets saved in the first episode. I quite like the fish people design, aside from a certain aspect of it, which you'll see if you decide to watch this anime. But yeah, that is all that I have to say for Blue Submarine No.6. I recommend it a little shakily, with a little bit less heart than I usually would. So do it that way you will. Now, we're going to get into the much more controversial topic today, and one that I have a lot more to say about. Tanya the Evil. This is a military war isekai fantasy, which is a crazy amount of genres to clash together. But I think that this show handles it pretty well, aside from the fact that I don't think it being an isekai really matters after the first episode, or really where they explain the isekai. I don't even think you start off knowing it's an isekai, honestly. I don't think they introduce the isekai element until the second or third episode. And, I mean, it's the isekai is pointless, and it only serves to push the weird theism theme that's being pushed here, because our main character is like a staunch atheist, but there's this god who, honestly, their entire motivation for isekaiing the MC is just dumb as fuck. And the whole anime kind of feels like edgy atheist, writing an Old Testament god, and the whole anime is kind of edgy, but the edgy side of the anime is kind of fun. I almost feel like you could remove the isekai element here and nothing, it wouldn't matter that much. It would just make our lead character kind of a schizo child that is involved in the war effort and talks to a god in their head sometimes. I think that it could still work if we took away the isekai element, but I'm not bothered that it's an isekai. It's not mentioned a super lot, to be honest, and it doesn't affect the plot in major ways. I really feel like you'll forget that it's an isekai after a couple episodes anyways. To get to some of the things that I like in regards to this anime, once I get past the isekai thing, I think Tanya is actually a really fun character. I think that the anime is really funny in parts, and I like the animation here. I like the style that they went with here. It's definitely not high budget or anything, but I think the action scenes work well. I think the magic system's interesting, but not something that they ever really go into. And it feels like the battle scenes being done well are kind of counterintuitive to the point of the show. This is an anti-war show in essence, but to quote, Francois Truffaut, no anti-war films exist because of the spectacle of the medium in which we're watching this on, and the battle scenes are incredibly fun to watch and really, really cool. But it does that, and I also feel like Tanya as a character just kind of gets vindicated constantly, and I feel like the way that the show frames her tries to make all of her actions seem not necessarily good. She is a pragmatic character, and I enjoy pragmatic characters largely. But it does feel like Tanya's never punished for any of her decisions. It does feel like there's maybe one scenario that I can think of where it feels like she's punished. And it feels like the show is always trying to vindicate her and sort of make her look cool with some of the things she does. And this even includes like a large-scale massacre that happens to these captured civilians at one point. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not one of the people that think that this is like a pro-Nazi show, as a lot of people seem to, mostly because it's dated to take place more so towards World War I, which was before all the Nazi stuff happened. And also, Tanya's not shown to really, on the inside or the outside, really ever be a fascist. I would say the worst thing that she does in the show is she's an imperialist, which is like a diet fascist. It's not quite as bad, but at the same time, I don't want to sit here and act like imperialism's cool. Imperialism's not cool. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as like Tanya goes as a character, I think. And the other problem with Tanya as well is it never feels like any situation that she's put in has any weight or tension. I feel like anytime that she's inconvenienced in the show, it's played up a lot more for comedy than it is for a real serious bad thing happening to her. It never, like, even when she came across the scientist that was like, Unja, I have this new device that I want you to try out, Unja, and all this kind of stuff. Like, even when that happened, it didn't feel like there was a huge impact on Tanya. She just kind of lives that situation and gets through it, and when he shows up later, she's apprehensive about him, but ultimately goes along with whatever the fuck he's saying. So yeah, I don't know. Also, the fight in episode 11 is total peak, and I really, really liked it. I find myself kind of at an end with this show, because I like it, but there are elements of it that I'm like, is this like... I think the artist's intent is to, like, be talking about how war's bad, but the Francois Truffaut quote from earlier is kind of prevalent because despite the fact that, I'm supposed to think war bad, I'm ultimately supposed to think war bad walking away from this, but I never feel like war looks bad on this show. I think war looks really cool on this show, right? And maybe that's just my perception of it. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe I shouldn't be perceiving the show that way. But I do feel like because of how great the fighting scenes are and how Tanya's almost always vindicated in her actions, even if she gets pushback, from the higher ups, I feel like she's always vindicated. The anti-war message gets kind of muddled through that. I don't know. And I state again, there's also an entire group of people that are calling her a lolly Nazi, which I'm not going to get too deep into the lolly thing because, that's again up to your perception. I don't feel like this show's ever perverse in any way or weird about Tanya being a child. It's just kind of part of the gimmick of the show. And if you can't get past that, then fine, fair. And I see people being like, why is there a child allowed in combat anyways? You guys need to read up on wars. Children have been used historically in multiple wars, and this is not a new thing. This is not even a new thing today. It's not even something that doesn't happen anymore. Like, child soldiers are not a new thing. You guys need to broaden your horizons and learn about child soldiers because it is a thing that happens throughout the world. And I'm not going to coddle you on this podcast about it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with the lolly thing, and I've even seen a specific quote from the author stating that the Nazi thing is just totally false, and like, why would he want to make Tanya that kind of character? Tanya's an emaciated orphan. The whole point of her getting put into this world by X, his reasoning is like, life is going to be much harder. But then Tanya just kind of thrives, and X doesn't really do anything that stops that. As a matter of fact, he puts her in a lot of positions that make her get even more power to some degree. So there's just a lot going on that, I don't know. I don't understand the whole thing going on with Entity X or Being X or whatever he's called. It just feels like this was our lame excuse for an isekai. I don't know. I didn't find it super interesting, and I think that we introduced possibly the coolest character of this show right as it was ending. Because I felt the entire time that Tanya never really had a real antagonist, and then for like a brief episode she has a real antagonist, and that one goes away pretty quickly. And then they introduce, and I am shitting you not, they introduce Mary Sue at the end of the season, which is a hilarious character name, but she also seems like she's going to be the most potential rival that Tanya has, so I'm very interested to see where they go with her in Season 2. Mary Sue looks very cool. Season 2 is apparently coming out quite soon, and I am looking forward to watching it. So overall, do I recommend this show? Again, it's kind of iffy. It's, like I said, there's a lot of stuff to get past. There's a lot of stuff that you have to be okay with. There's some people, they don't like any kind of military war stuff in their shows, and I can understand that, but at the same time, I think this show's worth pushing through. I do really like Tanya the Evil. I think it works really well, and I think it's a pretty fire anime. I haven't seen the movie. I do want to check out the movie. I'm not sure if Mary Sue shows up in it or not. I'm hoping that Mary Sue is going to be a continuous antagonist throughout Season 2. That's kind of my hope. But I need to check out the movie. I have not seen it, but I do plan to check it out pretty soon. And yeah, I do recommend this one kind of shakily as well. I can understand why someone may start it and instantly decide to drop it. I can see all kinds of different perspectives on this show, but it was one that I found myself really enjoying. I think the second half of the season kind of drops off a bit because one of the real problems with this show, at least for me, was I felt like the war is progressing constantly, and we do traverse and go to different locations quite often because of the flying powers in this show, but I never really feel like narratively we go anywhere. I don't feel like Tanya ever really has to change throughout the show. I don't feel like any of her battalion changes or develops as characters. I couldn't tell you a single fucking person's name except for maybe Victoria. And that's only because she was one of the people who were closest to Tanya early on. And once her battalion gets introduced, I don't really feel like we ever learn anything about them as characters or really have them have any interesting character moments aside from one of them gets disciplined at one point by Tanya and then another one tries to stop the civilian massacre that happens in the show. But other than that, I don't feel like they have any interesting character moments comparatively, and I think Tanya's a pretty static character. She's pretty stuck in her ways, and I don't think she's really going to change. So those are my real issues with the show and some of the other ones that I mentioned earlier, but ultimately I enjoyed my time with Tanya the Evil. I look forward to more Tanya the Evil. I'm probably going to check out the movie, in the coming days and see kind of how I feel about that. So, yeah, that's where I find myself with Tanya the Evil. Check it out if it sounds like something that would interest you, and if it doesn't, then don't check it out. But let me know, what are some of your iffy recommendations? What are some things that you would maybe tell someone to watch, but it comes with a lot of stipulations, or at least a couple stipulations. Maybe not a lot, but a couple. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of AnimeSub. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of AnimeSub. I had a lot of fun putting it on for you. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And I am going to go catch up on some sleep now. So thank you all so much for listening. I will be back in the next episode. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night, a wonderful day, whatever it is, wherever you are. I'll see you next time.